Welcome to Not Entirely Unlike Tea with Christine Collins. Hey there, it's Christine Collins, and today I have an interesting reflection for you. And this is around something that I observe pretty frequently in the entrepreneur world, but I think that it applies in many, many different circumstances and settings as well. And that is the response that I see happening when someone does a particular thing. They offer a specific service or product, and they happen to observe someone else in their sphere that offers something similar or even identical. And I do think that to some extent, this is just human nature, and it's a very natural, organic response, assuming that if there's more than one of you that does something similar, that's going to be in some way a negative for you or problematic for you. And I wanted to just offer a few different thoughts about that to reflect on for you to see if perhaps it's worth adjusting that and looking at it a little bit differently. So one thought is, if you are in a space that is a little bit cutting edge, a little bit unusual, a little bit new, where perhaps not everyone has heard of your type of work or service, I actually think it can be quite beneficial when there are more people coming into that space. Because each of those people, even if their audiences overlap somewhere, they probably have some portion of their audience that does not overlap. And ultimately, they are widening the attention span of the collective and bringing awareness to that service or topic or issue in a way that ultimately makes it better for everybody who offers that thing. So just using myself as an example, when I first came up with the idea of recording hypnosis, I was not seeing a lot of that sort of thing at that time. So this is going back to about 2017 or so. And I certainly knew providers who offered live hypnosis and coaching sessions, but there was a lot less of the recorded meditations and things similar to that in my sphere at that time. And so even as I began to consider how to go about marketing this and trying to find coaching support and help to learn what to do and that sort of thing, it was even challenging to convince my business coaches at the time that that was a viable product. But in the last several years, there has been an explosion of people offering these types of things. There are platforms now that are dedicated to things like recorded meditations and similar types of tools. And I think that some might look at me and ask me, well, doesn't that bother you or intimidate you in some way? And I actually very much feel the opposite. It's become much more accepted now. And people talk about it now as a viable product. And it's become known enough that there are more people who are actually seeking it, looking for it, searching for it, and that makes them more likely to find me and my work. So that's one perspective. And then I think that it's worth adding another layer to that, which is something that often surprises people when I say this, but I don't view any of the things that I offer, whether it's related to the messaging programs that I sell or my hypnosis membership or anything in terms of mindset support, I don't look at those pieces as a be-all and end-all for anyone. When I look at my own life and the tools that I use to support myself and the things that I have accumulated through learning over time, it has come through many, many different places and people. I did not go to the same schooling for all of my education. And as an entrepreneur, I have not learned all of the things from one person. Over a span of several years, I've worked with different experts. I've learned how to do different things from different people. And each of those new things that I took in was a layer towards my own success. And I would fully expect the same for my clients. I also recognize that nobody else can be me and do what I do in the way that I do it. They may do very similar things, but they will never be able to do it as I would or as I do. They don't have my years of lived experience. They don't have my education. They don't have my powers of observation and the insights that I have gleaned through many years of observing, reflecting, notating, often being the silent, quiet observer, taking in a whole lot. Nobody else could have access to that. So it doesn't matter if someone were to come along and exactly copy all of my marketing. They will not be capable of delivering what I deliver. And of course, the same is true in reverse. And I don't expect for that to be the case. It's also true that one individual will not ever have sufficient knowledge, even in their very specific topic of expertise, to help somebody with absolutely everything that will come up in that area. So if that client has the curiosity and the capacity, assuming that they have the resources to work with different practitioners or providers, I do believe that that is the best way for them to grow. There is no be-all, end-all service or provider. It's kind of like how we each have a variety in our friendships and different relationships that we have in our lives. We may have learned how to ride a bike from one adult in our life and had another adult in our life teach us about nature or art or cars. We are always layering our learning and our growth. And I see sometimes that people fall into the mindset trap of believing that there's like a cake, and that if a slice of the cake is taken by someone, then there won't be enough for everyone. And I think it's just stepping into a recognition that we're not talking about a single cake. It's not a zero-sum game that that client will only ever have one coach or will only ever have one mindset provider. It's more likely that someone seeking those types of services will be amongst this group of lifelong learners that actually likes to dibble and dabble here and there. And yet there's a lot of hesitation, I think, to just be open about this. I have actually had people come and work with me who have begged me to remain anonymous in terms of wanting to provide me a testimonial because they were that worried about offending someone else that they had previously worked with on a similar issue. And of course, I always protect the anonymity and privacy of every client, and so I do allow for that during the testimonial process. But it's an interesting concern that I see happening really often, and I even notice it in myself. If I happen to work with two different people who do kind of a similar thing, it's kind of like the sense like, oh, like you're cheating on this person with that person. And even though I think that instinct is there, it's also something that we can take apart and dissect and hopefully adjust and update to a more modern way of looking at this. It doesn't need to be something that we take personally. It doesn't need to be a pissing contest. We aren't men measuring things, and we don't need to. There is plenty of space. And I also very much believe in attraction and vibration. I think that the type of person or business that's willing to go and try and squash everyone else in order to be the best, I should say the quote-unquote best, will probably be far shorter lived than somebody who has the confidence and the comfort with people coming and going. You want repeat customers. You want people to enjoy working with you so much that they stay or continuously come back. But at the same time, if they don't, you can release them with love and with the hope for their continued journey and growth as well as your own. We certainly eat at many different restaurants for many different reasons. One may have the best atmosphere and the other one has the best pasta or the best dessert. And those restaurants don't feel jealous of each other. We get something different from different interactions. And so that's why I like to say I don't like the quote-unquote diss train, where I see people feeling the need to trash talk someone else's work in order to just present as controversial, in order to present themselves as the slightly better expert, slightly more knowledgeable expert. Now, certainly, as a caveat to that, if you are seeing something harmful, I think it's well worth talking through that with your audience. Like if you're seeing something that's clearly a scam or clearly going to be harmful for your audience, absolutely making them aware of that, alerting them to that is important. But I'm talking about the mentality out there to sort of pick somebody who is in that space and is maybe even a little bit more well-known and trashing their work, putting it down in order to portray yourself as the better expert. I just think that's a little silly. And I don't think that it's particularly effective in terms of convincing people that they should turn to you instead of someone else. And part of this ties into the way that we feel about our audience and our clients. When we're looking at tactics in marketing, and I would like to go ahead and call them old-fashioned, it is a mentality that you need to do things a certain way, you need to position yourself a certain way in the marketplace, and participate in activities like pain dialing marketing, which I've talked about in other spaces, in other trainings. The problem often stems from the way that the marketer actually feels about their audience. If you adopt the viewpoint that your audience and your clients are sacred, and that the relationship that you have with them is sacred, then you tend to approach things more ethically, more authentically, and with their actual best interest at heart, and not some staged, perceived best interest. You are actually wanting to inform them from a place of wanting to inform them, and not from a place of manipulating their viewpoint into agreeing solely with yours or looking down on perhaps other viewpoints. You actually want what's best for them. And I have to fully acknowledge that in some cases, what's best for them is to work with someone else. And there are many times when I have referred people to someone else who does similar work because I know that what they're looking for or what they need is not something that I can offer, but I know someone else who can. And that to me is the crux of true client-centered marketing and messaging. So I hope you found this illuminating. And until we meet again, I wish you a most magical and creative rest of your day. Thanks for listening. This is Christine Collins at transformcreate.com.